Gospel according to Luke, the 19th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
He, Jesus, entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd he could not because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
The story of Zacchaeus and Jesus is the perfect Reformation Day story. Because Reformation, after all, is all about God's grace and how God is reforming and transforming the church and the people within the church. You see, it's the same for Zacchaeus. When he met Jesus, he received grace. And this grace changed and transformed him. When we prepared this worship service and we're looking at the hymns to sing, of course, the 2 ladies, which I prepared that with, immediately started singing. You know, Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. So it just happened. When I said, it's a story of Zacchaeus, and bang, they started singing. You see, this was my image of Zacchaeus, going to Sunday school and so on. It's like this, poor short guy, right? No one liked him. He was bullied. And because he was short and no one liked him, no one allowed him to see Jesus, so he had to be creative, climb up that tree to see him. Poor Zacchaeus. Sniff. But this wee little man was a crook. He was a criminal. I mean, if you compare him today, you would probably say, well, he was part of the mafia of Jericho, extorting money from people and squeezing money out of people beyond what was needed and lawful. And yet, there was something in this criminal Zacchaeus that was curious. Curious about this Jesus from Nazareth. Curious what he's all about, and maybe even curious if there is something else for him, something more for him, something more to life that would or might still his hunger and thirst for life and meaning. Maybe we could say that Zacchaeus was actually longing for grace without knowing it. That he was longing to be accepted. And that longing was so strong that he climbed that tree, not regarding what the people might think about him. I mean, after all, he was the chief tax collector. And he could lose some of his dignity when people saw him climbing up that tree. And now the unthinkable. It was unthinkable for all the people there, including Zacchaeus. The unthinkable happened. Jesus stopped, noticed him, stopped and noticed him. Just that. Just that Jesus stopped and noticed this tax collector in the tree was an act of grace. It could be sometimes that if we just stop somewhere and notice someone, that might, just that, already might be an act of grace. Although it doesn't sound like that. God's grace entered in Zacchaeus' life. And it continues. I mean, Jesus calling to him with an interesting thing, not kind of like, oh, Zacchaeus, could I stay at your home tonight? But Zacchaeus, I must be a guest in your home today. There was no question behind it. It was a statement. But with this, God's grace entered Zacchaeus' life. Jesus did not reject him for what he did. And he was a criminal, just pointed out again. He was a bad person in the things he did. And still, Jesus did not reject him. Jesus didn't give up on him, but offered him fellowship despite the despicable acts of harm he caused to others. You see, this is why I am with Jesus. That's why I believe in Jesus Christ. Because he accepts us for who we are. He loves us, although he knows it even better than we do, that we are not perfect. And that we're not always good people. Sometimes we still can hide it to the outside. Inside, thoughts, that's also what counts, right? Jesus offers us forgiveness. Although we are most likely to fall in the same trap and do it again. And guess what? Jesus is going to offer us forgiveness again when we come to him. And he knows us and he calls us by name. Like to be known personally to Jesus, to God, it's one of the things why I believe. In Jesus Christ, I meet the God who seeks me. Not the God who's waiting somewhere for me to come, finally get a grasp on my life and come. But the God who seeks me, who loves me unconditionally, who forgives me, and who meets me with grace and mercy over and over again. This is at the core of the Reformation. This is the core of what the Lutheran Church believes. Undeserved grace. Yeah, I know, right? We all, I just gotta put us all into that bag of, we all at times think, well, yes, I deserve that love and grace of God. After all, I was pretty good today, right? But in the end, we also know it's undeserved. And it makes it so much bigger and so much, I don't know, greater that it is offered to us and to every person on this planet, not asking if you deserve it or not. Grace doesn't distinguish between good and bad, sinner and saint. And when God's grace enters a person, when you are exposed to God's grace, it will transform you. when you're touched by God's grace, it will not leave you unchanged. Look at Zacchaeus. His crooked life is turned upside down. The first thing he says is, I will give half of all my possessions to the poor. Take 50% away. And since we can kind of think, well, that some or good chunk of his money was gathered by criminal acts of asking for more taxes than allowed, and now he says he will pay back everyone he betrayed 4 times as much. There's not going to be very much left in his own pockets. His life is turned around. He tries to reconcile with those he had wronged before. He realizes what he did wrong, and he wants to make it right again. And instead of cheating and defrauding, he turns into an honest man of integrity. And he also shows care and compassion for the poor, which he obviously did not do before. Instead of hoarding and keeping his wealth to himself, he gives it away freely. And just to remind you, Jesus didn't ask for any of that, right? Jesus didn't come saying, hey, I want to come to you, God loves you, but you should do this and this and this and this. This comes from his own heart, from his inner being, that he was so touched by Jesus Christ, by God's grace, that he said, this is what I have to do. He gives all his wealth away freely to share this grace of God with others. And this is how grace works. Grace doesn't work by saying, you better do, you better be, and I have some more laws for you. We heard something about the law in the reading from Romans. It tells us what we do wrong. But God is not coming to us that way anymore. God is coming saying, guys, I love you. I want you. You're important to me. This changes us. This changes who we are right in there. When we are touched by God's grace, it will change us. And God's grace will turn us into ambassadors of grace. I don't know who of you attended the first round of college meetings last week or the week before, but those who went answered that question, what is God's mission in the world and how are we part of it? Looking at the story of Zacchaeus, the answer would be, God's mission is to flood this world with grace. To flood this world with grace. And we have the privilege to be agents of this grace in this world. For the people around us who are longing for grace, longing for acceptance, longing for forgiveness, longing to belong, to be known and still loved. We are called to do for others what Christ did for us. We are God's plan to infiltrate this world with grace and mercy, to love those who think they don't deserve to be loved, to recognize those people at the side of the road who are often overlooked, to show them what grace means. In this way, we are truly living up to the legacy of the Reformation by being carriers of God's grace, mercy, and love.